Yeah, we get the government that we tolerate. Hey, it's good to be with you today. I know it might have been just a hair longer than 4 o'clock. I it's been a long day, but with the title of a show that we get the government we tolerate. NGOs are getting rich off of the migrant crisis that we are facing currently with a basically no border at all. We have no border. And who's to blame for that? Well, it is flat out everyone in Washington, D.C. And I don't believe that there's anybody that can raise their hand and say that they have actively been doing what it takes to secure our border, to protect and defend the people of the United States of America from both domestic and foreign adversaries. The news is full of it. Obviously, I'm not going to cover all of the stories that are out there. I mean, it's horrific. The news is just the news cycle's full of it. This poor young lady in Georgia, you know, now as we're beginning to see the suspect who's been arrested was in FBI's custody and released, known for assaulting FBI agents. I mean, you truly, no matter what story you can think that you can come up with, um, it's off the rails. We are we are living in a police state. There is no government that is truly living by the Constitution over here on my left hand. Folks, we said it, and I think I told you this on the front end of the year, more in 2024. I'm expecting more of everything. I'm expecting more of the way I live, but I'm also expecting the more in the way of the world and how things came through 2023 because we're gaining ground. The fact that yours truly can have a podcast live 4 to 5 Tuesdays and Thursdays on 4 different platforms: Rumble, YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, and Facebook, is proof that we're gaining ground. They never anticipated the world as we know it with technology and the ability to expand that technology to the masses, to look into cameras and to be able to cover the content we do, which is beating back their narrative. Because truly, their goal by now, coming through the Obama years, they weren't able to, come on, we all remember Hillary Clinton was a 99-1 victor in that presidential election. Trump had no chance of winning, right, in 2016, and yet he fooled them. We fooled them. We said we are not going to tolerate this kind of government that we were getting under the Obama administration. And we snuck one through the goal. We literally were able to get Trump into office. Unfortunately for Trump, he had a lot of bad actors on his administration, on his cabinet. He didn't know what to expect. He took for granted what was happening and what was in place. Little did he know how bad things were. And I'm going to cover that a little bit today. Besides the migrant crisis, I'm going to cover something that I just uncovered. I don't know if any of you have watched it, but you need to get out there and see it. Tucker Carlson did an interview with Mike Pence. And if you are not following Mike Pence on Twitter, X, you need to go out there. Mike, Benz. Mike also, and I didn't pull out my handy dandy brain that I'm sitting on. That would be my cell phone. It provides me much of everything I need to know about life, which is kind of a little factoid I want to share with you real quick. I don't know if, besides Tucker Carlson and Mike Pence, did you happen to see Dr. Phil on The View? the ladies on The View were beside themselves when Dr. Phil started talking about the amount of damage that has been done by young people walking around with a cell phone, rather than living life, living someone else's life were his words. And the depression, the amount of just everything. We've seen it. It's on a rise. Teenage suicide, um, drugs being administered to kids. Obviously, this whole indoctrination through our school systems. But they started pushing back on Dr. Phil, saying, "Well, they had to go home." Uh, and Dr. Phil said, "Well, unfortunately, a lot of those kids were put into households where things aren't necessarily good. And did they necessarily have to be uh, in their homes during COVID 24/7 uh, every day of the week?" Um, and because it put kids at risk. Unfortunately, it's a sad statement on our society, but some of those kids were in abusive homes and they went back to abusive homes. But the View co-stars, they were saying, "But Dr. Phil, they we had a pandemic. They could have been out there exposing blah blah blah." And Dr. Phil said, "No, the damage that we're going to see that was done by the virus supersedes the death count due to the virus," and that just put them off the edge. But that was a little side note. I just happened to pick that up, uh, and I hope that you guys get a chance to go and watch that. It's Dr. Phil, who is kind of surprisingly an acolyte, like Dr. Oz, of Oprah Winfrey. And it's amazing how those guys really do kind of side with yours truly, and you guys. Obviously, I know that you wouldn't be here tuning into the DPB show if it wasn't for um, the fact that we share common ideology, a way of life. Now, I get it. There's those who show up at the DPB show. They end up in the comments section, which reminds me to make sure I have the comments section turned on. Um, and thank you everyone that's already jumped in on the comment sections. I'll get back to that, but I want to make sure that go out, watch Dr. Phil, see what is happening. Obviously, things are picking up speed, but I want to get to this Mike Benz because Mike's got a foundation that he started that's called the Freedom. Well, Freedom here. It's the Foundation of Freedom Online. Go out, follow him on X, on Twitter, um, and see what he has to say. But his interviews are as thought provoking as I've encountered. In fact, Tucker Carlson was in awe, and he wouldn't even hardly ask a question because he was sitting back just digesting everything that was coming at him. So that's why I encourage you to go out there. The interview was like 65 minutes. And for the most of the time spent in the interview, Tucker might have been a total of 5 minutes at the most. This guy, Mike Benz, just is former uh, Department of not Department of Defense, but he was in the State Department. I'm sorry, I was mixing words. I'm super excited. That's why it's kind of hard for me to get out all my words today. I'm also making sure that I'm good eye contact with the camera. The other day, I was super excited to have Ryan McKenzie of the Ryan Mack Show and Chad Burke on the screen. So I had all three of them in the screen at the same time. And I thought that was kind of so cool that even though I can see them on screen, I was watching them talk. And I need to be talking with you guys. You guys. I sound like you guys, my audience, the people responsible for the success of At the DPB Show. Please like and subscribe. Continue to like and subscribe it. Uh, but Mike Benz hits upon things, and Bongino's been covering them, and that's super super cool because I listen to Dan a lot. I get a lot of content from Dan Bongino. He seems to be someone like Mike Benz that truly walks through the evidentiary state of arguments. He is gathering information, and where's the information? It's not from right wing source. It's not from places like uh, you know Revolver News, even though he does use some Revolver News or uh, the Federalist or places like that. This is coming from mainstream liberal sources like the New York Times, like CNN. When you put the pieces together, you realize they've been telling us the story the whole time. Now, granted, it seemed to be skewed, but it really was sharing with us what their plan is the whole time, including this NGOs are getting rich off of the migrant crisis. The NGOs, governmental, non-governmental organizations, and other institutions are the democracy that the Democrats, the liberals, are talking about. When they say that there's something that's an existential threat to the democracy, they're not talking about we, the people, as we believe it through the Constitution. They're talking about the institutions, our school systems, banking systems, the IMRF, the International Monetary Fund. They're talking about media. They're talking about ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNNBC. They're talking about those factions as being the institutions that need to be protected. They're the democracy. And anytime that we come out there, we the people, and utilize the resources we have through technology, the platforms like today on the DPB show, and we start saying, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't pass the smell test. It doesn't add up, right? Two of the things that Mike Benz talks about in his interview with Tucker is the two biggest events that were censored of all time was the 2020 election and the corona COVID crisis. Those were the two largest censored events ever in the history of the world. And when did censorship, we heard that, right? The left would tell us that that's a conspiracy. They're not taking down posts, they're not burying posts, they're not slowing posts, they're not shadow banning, whatever that might be. Yes, they were. And now there's proof. They've even testified on on in Congress that they've been performing these acts because they literally saw any of us who were sharing information that was inconsistent with their narrative, with their way of life, that we now were basically terrorists in some forms, domestic terrorists. We heard that through the Department of Justice and the FBI as they were investigating parents. See, they were spending time investigating parents at school board meetings, but yet this young man, this terrorist, domestic terrorist who was here illegally, who killed this beautiful young nursing student down in Georgia, on the University of Georgia's campus. She happened to go to another campus not too far away in Augusta, but she was just out for a jog, and this brutal, demonic, possessed demon, demonic and possessed demon. That's the same. That's kind of redundant, but this dude is off the rails. History in our country for only a short period of time, since 2022, of committing crimes against humanity, against us, citizens of the United States. And this is what the NGO, the non-governmental organizations, through so many layers and layers of government, layers in government. Have you guys ever asked yourself, and I'm going to ask this to you guys right now in the chat, what does it take to accrue 34 trillion, 34 trillion, not billion with a B, but trillion with a T, $1 trillion in debt? And to think back that only 20 plus years ago, 24 years ago, we weren't even close to that. We were maybe a couple $1 trillion in debt. And now we're breaching 34 trillion with $1 trillion of interest a year. What does it take to get there? Well, obviously, as the title says, NGOs are getting rich off the migrant crisis. Um, can you imagine the amount of money right now? And we've heard all the stories out there, and you guys can pull some of the best articles out there and look them up for yourselves. What we're spending for illegal immigrants right now, and what they are being afforded, whether it be healthcare benefits, housing, uh, debit cards. No wonder we have an invasion of our southern border, because ultimately we have gone out there and imported these people. And who is it that has imported it? Well, go out and listen to Mike Benz on uh, X via the Tucker Carlson interview, or go out and find Mike on his page, Mike Benz, or the Foundation for Freedom Online, and just hear him out and see what he's been working on his entire life. He's been part of the State Department. Therefore, he really pieces together what he calls the blob. And you definitely heard Dan Bongino talk about that on his show yesterday. Shout out to Dan. Something I found out interesting today's show on Dan Bongino was that he put out a list of sources, non-traditional sources on the social media, where he gathers a lot of his information, a lot of his resources. And he mentioned a couple names, and then people started chiming in saying, "Hey, Dan, you didn't mention me." And Dan just goes off on him, and he's like, "Is this what it's about?" And I truly believe it is ego driven, and in so many ways. And I hope to never be that person. When it comes to providing you guys a platform to be in a chat, to have a discussion about some of the issues that are facing us today, and will continue to face us going forward into tomorrow and beyond. Um, that I never become that person. I do have to let you know about an experience I had on Saturday. It was my first keynote speaking experience down in Fayette County, Illinois. That is the county seat, I believe, is Vandalia. Vandalia. There happens to be uh, a minimum security prison, I think, on the outskirts on the north side of Vandalia. However, I had an opportunity to be the keynote speaker at their Lincoln Day dinner, and it was very exciting. And I will definitely tell you that I have not a clue what I said that night. I had an idea of what I wanted to say, but I truly turned it over to the Holy Spirit and asked the Holy Spirit to speak his words through my experiences. Lord, be with me, share my experiences. And I told about what I've shared with you guys many times, the whole getting kicked in the gut the night of the election, the gubernatorial election of 2022. I started off there, where I was like, "No way. How can this be? We had the best candidate that we've ever had, that I believe we've ever had in the state of Illinois for governor, um, and they were able to call the race 1 minute after the polls closed, maybe 2 minutes. It seems like it was only a minute, but it might have been a little longer than a minute. And I went from there to discuss going forward what we need to do as a Republican Party to make sure that doesn't happen again. We know it can be done, right? We saw it in 2016. What a We flooded the zone, right? The people were so fed up with what was transpiring in this country, what the trajectory of what they were seeing. They had somebody that was coming in saying, "Hey, we're going to shut the border off. We're going to build a wall. We're going to reestablish America greatness." Uh, and that's what Americans want to hear. I don't care who you are, what party you're involved with. That's why I love what Mike Bence refers to as the blob, which many of us know as the deep state. And that is this organization of people who profit off of taxpayer funded money. Meaning, when I ask the question, spending money you don't have and printing more and having less goods, yes, Ryan, you got it. But it's even bigger than that. It's manufacturing government on steroids. In fact, steroids don't even do it justice, right? Because $34 trillion in debt, how do you amass that kind of indebtedness where you have $1 trillion in interest every year? It's almost unconscionable to think that we have gotten to this point where government truly is so large and so many people like the NGOs are getting rich off of government and leveraging government. Politicians are going into government only to try to get into the private sector to leverage the government that they once were sworn to protect and defend the Constitution. Instead, they turn it into a self-serving enrichment program for their families. Those are the reports that we see over and over and over again. But getting back to my time spent in Vandalia at the Fayette County Republican Lincoln Day dinner, it was that essence of pushing out that messaging, which I believe has to happen because the Republican Party, and I stepped into somewhat of a hornet's nest down there. Uh, there happens to be a race from their Republican county chair, Matt Hall, seems like a decent guy. Unfortunately for Matt, I think he's in a predicament because he started taking money. He's running against Blaine Wilhar. I probably should get that out. He's running against an incumbent state representative who happens to have been on my show before. The couple gentlemen in the crowd also have been on my show. Tom DeVore was in attendance. So was Judge Michael McCaney. That might sound familiar because Michael McCaney was the one who was the judge presiding over the lawsuit that Darren Bailey and Tom DeVore brought against J.B. Pritzker. But Blaine happens to be running to reclaim his state rep seat. I think this will be his third or fourth term. I'm thinking let's see, Darren was in, it would be his fourth term because Darren ran for governor. He's serving out his third term right now. So fourth term. So Blaine's getting to be a seasoned state rep. My belief is 10 years is enough. So Blaine will have to make a decision whether he moves on to the state Senate or even runs for Congress. I personally believe that Blaine would be a great gubernatorial candidate or a lieutenant governor candidate. I think he's got that kind of a self-awareness and the ability to represent the people. I enjoy my time with Blaine while I was down in Fayette County, but Matt Hall is his opponent. Matt is also the kind of, like I said, the county Republican county chair for Fayette County, but Matt is receiving monies from unions. Teachers unions specifically, other unions out of Chicago. So why would it be that a Republican candidate for state rep suddenly is getting enticed to take campaign contributions from leftists, from the Democrats? They are concerned about this particular state rep, Blaine Wilhauer. In fact, I think they're very concerned. And it's sad to see that someone like Matt, who I believe, I don't know the man. I just sat with him at his table, and he had a couple other guests. Another gentleman there was the Fayette County board president. He worked at the prison. Nice guy. Had a beautiful family. Talked with his daughter, who also was involved in radio at a little town called Ramsey, which is just north of Vandalia. And she was super excited about what she was doing. And I hope to maybe get her on the DPB show because I believe that the youth are the most important thing we have as far as assets, as far as we have what they call capital, human capital, is our young people. And Kenzie was her name, and she would be a great person to have on. There was another young lady there. Her name's Isabella. I'm going to try to reach out to her. Her mom actually contacted me today stating that Isabella was the Miss Teen of the Miss Illinois pageant, and she is on fire. She wants to be governor someday of Illinois. So definitely want to get Isabella on the DPB show because that excites me. Building the bench, you've heard it many times over. Building the bench, building the bench. Blaine Wilhauer is a young representative who is part of the future of Illinois, not the past. Um, and I don't believe he's going to be there much longer than 10 years as a state rep. But getting back to this, his opponent now, who happens to be a Republican, and this is the irony of it is we're at a Republican function. It's one thing if you want to seek office and you want to primary somebody as a Republican, because all Republicans don't agree on everything. In fact, that's what's kind of cool about the Republican Party. And part of the reason why I vote Republican, uh, we're not dictated to. The Democrats, it's pretty straightforward. This is our candidate. You fall in line. If you don't, we will replace you. You will be outed of the Democrat Party. Right now, that particular party is gone in a direction that I think most of you who might have been a Democrat at one time or have been around long enough to know what the old Democrat Party looked like would be shocked where they're going and how they fall in line behind their candidates is part of what Mike Benz is talking about. So I know I keep referring to Mike Benz. Go out, listen to him. He did a piece on Daily Wire too. It's a little shorter than the interview with Tucker, but I'm going to put those up, post those so you guys can see them. But it is amazing how he dissects and pieces together what has happened in the world of the triangle, as he refers to it, or the blob, with the FBI, the CIA, the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, and how all of those factions work together now under the Department of State, the State Department, and how it was has been structured to undergird this whole thing. Um, I don't want to get too far away from my experience in Vandalia, but they all apply. We've heard it for so long, and I know you've heard it, that all politics is local. Well, I'm going to tell you that used to be the case. It's no longer the case. The influence of your local politicians is directly impacted by what is happening on a global initiative, under a global initiative. Every one of your representatives is being influenced globally, whether it's a township supervisor, whether it's a city council person. Chris Coos, for instance, mayor of the town of Norwell, where I live, um, he is now a director on the Amtrak board. He just was voted in, received. Everything is influenced. He is the mayor of Normal, but he is also a board of directors on the Amtrak board. That didn't come out right. He is a director on the board of directors, or yeah, I said that right. I said that right. He is a director on the board of directors for Amtrak. Everything, no matter what office it is, county board, influenced, school boards. We know that to be true. JB tipped his hat. He came out and basically rambled off a whole list of what it is we have to defend from. The right wing ultra mega extremists like Darren Bailey. In fact, he didn't say Darren, but he said that people run for school board and then one day they actually think they can be governor. And he goes and he looks around over his shoulder. He goes, "You know what we're talking about, right?" But this is what they mean by democracy: protecting and defending not the Constitution of the United States, but the institutions, the government. They truly hate America. They truly do not like us, yours truly. But let me get back to my speaking, my keynote speech at the Fayette County Republican Lincoln Day dinner, I should say the Lincoln Day dinner in Fayette County. I laid out the facts as it pertains to the elections, if you as you've heard, the gubernatorial races in Illinois, how Republicans have not been able to even get close to 1.8 million votes, but yet the Democrats went from 1.6 million, 89,000 votes in 2014 to 2.5 million votes in 2018. How did that happen? Well, that's where I'm going to push you back to, um, first and foremost, the what transpired on the level of vote by mail ballots. Vote by mail ballots were the influx, the difference, um, and it just started in 2018, right? Uh, they started doing vote by mail, but it was bigger than that. It was the 800,000 inactive voters that were on the voter rolls in Illinois. It was also the the game plan that the Democrat Party and JB Pritzker, with his billions of dollars, was able to implement. He took what Mike Madigan was already doing in the state of Illinois, and he mobilized so many people, and those people were able to go out and influence others, persuade others to vote, to get their ballots. Um, did they necessarily know who they were voting for? No. They went to low propensity, low information voters, which is why I encourage everyone, every one of you, whomever can hear my voice, get educated, seek out the information. We get the government we tolerate, not the government we expect. And right now, I don't know about you, I really can't tolerate the government we have, because they don't represent most of us. In fact, they represent hardly any of us, other than those who are benefiting, right? Who are gaining in an economy like this. And they exist. People like NGOs, people like institutions, government unions are benefiting in Biden, Obama, Biden, Clinton, whatever administrations. There are individuals who realize gain in times such as these. Under Bidenomics, people are gaining, and those people don't want to see an end to what they put in place. It crazy as that sounds. So I was there. Obviously, as I started saying, in the room was both these candidates for, I think he's in the 110th state rep district. They changed his state. He used to be the 107th, but I think he's now 110 in the redrawing. If I got that wrong, somebody look up Blaine Wilhauer's state rep and see if fact check me on that, or help me with the facts. But Blaine and Matt were in there, and my wife and I were just down there long enough to do the keynote. We, as you know, and if you follow any of my Facebook stuff, my Bella Saint Bernard, she's she's getting old, and she's finding that it's hard for her to stand. Arthritis has taken over and consumed her joints, and so I don't know how many days she has left on this earth, but every day is going to be a good day. I'm going to get her for a walk. I'm going to give her medication, her glucosamine. A friend of mine has suggested I get her some fish oil, so she's going to have fish oil on her food. She's going to have whatever she wants because she's been a good, faithful, loyal companion. And so my wife and I wanted to get back to Bella that night, and so we didn't stay around for the fireworks, but I heard they got got a little heated. I think it was cordial, but there were people asking this candidate for state rep, who happens to be the county Republican chair, why he would take money from the teachers unions and different uh, union groups that are truly behind Democrat candidates. And he said it wasn't like that, but we've grown to learn that some people can be influenced. It's unfortunate, even in the Republican Party. Uh, but it's time that the Republican Party realize that they have the message that resonates more with the people. We want good, secure, foundational borders. We want crime to be reduced on our streets. We want a good economy. We want to be able to go to the gas station and the grocery store and not sit back and calculate what we can't afford. We want to be able to go back to times when our economy was cruising. We want an educational system that is there to teach our children about the basics of learning, reading, writing, arithmetic. We want schoolrooms and public education to be places where young people can truly thrive and not have to be indoctrinated into a false religion, because that's what they've made it. When they talk about not bringing religion into school, what is it when we start wanting to change people's entire way of thinking through genital mutilation, through confusion, through chaos, through discipline or the lack thereof? There are so many areas that we know the Republican Party has a stronghold on. And unfortunately, that message has gotten lost. And partly because, as Mike Benz says, it was cooked that way. It was rigged that way. It was meant to be that we, the people, did not have a voice any longer. Can you imagine a color revolution in this country? We've mastered it as a government. And, I know that there are times when we've had to go in and influence elections because there are bad actors. There are bad people. We know. Golly, this young man who suspected, I should say, but okay, suspected of killing the nursing student. He's just a representative of a country where that goes on day in, day out, 24/7, 365. It's it it's beyond my mind that that a color revolution has now come to our country. Sorry, my phone's vibrating like crazy because there's a text thread that I'm on that at work, and it's blowing up right now, but hopefully I can go in and quiet it here. Let me do that actually so it doesn't vibrate anymore. Let's go hide alerts. Yep, there you go. Now it's not vibrating over on the table. I hope you guys weren't picking that up. But a color revolution right here in the United States of America. That's what happened with Joe Biden. You don't believe me? Go out and listen to the interview with Mike Benz. Have I said that enough? Mike Benz, Benz. Go and find his page. Um, like I said, he worked for the State Department. So this guy was seeing this happen right in front of his own eyes. It's not like something he had to go and make up. It's the Foundation for Freedom Online. That is his page. On X, but he also has at Mike Benz Cyber. If you put in Mike Benz, you'll find it. But there is no one that I know that's out there right now articulating that. And I'm sure there's many other resourceful people who have been doing the research on what has transpired. How do you take and watch a country go from what we used to remember this country being to where we're at today? And it was intentional. And I know I don't agree with it, but at times I almost sit back in awe of how they've pieced this together to protect their way of life. When you are a paid actor in a very broken system where you're living off the backs of others, where you're living off the taxpayers' dollars, um, I think it is like an elixir. You start drinking the Kool-Aid. Hence the reason for a color revolution, right? The ability to overthrow a government. That's what we had with President Trump. They overthrew him. Systematically, they're continuing to do that because they know what lies ahead. They see Trump on the horizon, And before, when he came into office, he was a little naive, didn't lack in passion for the office, but I think he was a little trusting. He believed certain people, and he had bad actors in his own cabinet the first time around. This time around, it's going to be a different story. He knows he knows where the bodies are. He knows where the data is. He knows what has transpired. His eyes are open. He said it the other night, or the other day, that he knows without holding the hand of our Lord and depending upon God Almighty, there's no way he could get through this. You know, he verbalized those words, and I believe that because he truly took it. Because this is a guy that you know, believe me, he says enough, and it's funny sometimes what he says because I think he makes light of it because he knows how serious this is. And I think he wants to give us a sense of confidence when he says, I stand between you and them. And he does. No one in the history of this country has ever been put through the scrutiny, through the uh, literal, I mean, or I shouldn't say literal, figuratively, and maybe sometimes literal. He's been martyred. They have put him on a spit. They are trying to truly remove him. And to think that none of this, if he would not have declared that he was going to seek the office of president, none of this probably would happen. That's how powerful of a position the president of the United States wields, or I should say the power of the people. Unfortunately, we've had somebody wielding the power of themselves, and that is the Joe Biden administration, Bidenomics. It has nothing to do with we the people. It has everything to do with the blob, the deep state, the people who believe um, that America isn't the greatest country on the face of the earth, that America isn't an exceptional country. They believe in a system of globalization. They believe in very few people realizing the benefits of what this God-given earth is about. And that's not going to stop. So when I say more in 2024, that's what I mean. The best depiction of that, like I said, is go out, listen to the oral discussion, the oral arguments or oral evidence from uh, Mr. Benz, Mike Benz, Benz. He does a much better job than I could ever do. In fact, I had to listen to it 3 times, and I've got to probably go back and listen to it another 3 times. It is so impactful. There is so much content in how he steps through the process of what has led us to where we're at that I'd love to report on it at greater length, but I got to get educated on it. It's funny, as I go off and I speak as a keynote speaker, and there are certain things I know. I know the fact that Illinois has close to 8,000 units of government, 852 school districts in 102 counties. I know that the state of Florida has 1,650 units of government, and that Illinois has almost 5,000 plus more units, 5,300 more units of government than Florida. And Florida has twice the population. And this is part of the NGOs get rich off the migrant crisis. We have so many units of government and so many people sucking off of the proverbial teat of Illinois government that's why we have a financial crisis going on. And I know that it was JB's opportunity to shine, right? He did his state of the state address, and it looks like we're going to go out and spend another 53 billion. And only to think that 6 years ago, our state spending budget was 39 billion. How did we grow so quickly to get to close to $54 billion? And we know that it's not there's going to be a shortfall of the amount of money that is there because they just don't allocate correctly to deal with the pension crisis, the public union crisis, where they're underfunding, shorting public unions. And they had. Now, granted, they're providing funding now, but that's because they were limited by those unions from doing anything because they would lose those votes. Those votes speak loud when suddenly they finally realize that, hey, listen, we've got to protect what we have here. We were promised, right? It's a promise. A pension is a promise. A broken pension is still a promise. And boy, is it broken. But JB had an opportunity to shine and obviously fill those in the room with a bunch of lies because JB is a liar. Um, he doesn't know the truth. That's not true. JB knows the truth. I believe man, woman have an innate sense of good versus evil. And deep down in their hearts, they know what's good. JB's never been on that side most of his life. I mean, he's obviously someone who has protected child sacrifice. He believes in it full heartedly. He gets googly about abortion rights and protecting and defending uh, people's or protecting and defending a woman's right to choose, which I believe that women should definitely have the right to choose. They should have the right to choose who they sleep with. Now, I know there are those that are going to be screeching saying, well, how about when there is some type of sexual assault, which is a crime? Um, what then? Well, are we really talking about the amount of abortions when it compares to JB's legislation of 9 months partial birth abortions? Isn't that extreme? You know, when JB likes to wield the term extreme, that the right wing extremists, the mega movement, they're extreme. Isn't it extreme to carry a baby all the way to to birth and then decide just to kill it? I don't know. That seems a little extreme to me, and I get it. It's a sensitive issue, and I feel bad for every person that's confronted with a decision to either carry life to birth or to exterminate life. That can't be easy. In fact, I know that that's something that, uh, as reported, because I've never experienced it, um, that that lives with you forever. That never goes away, forever and ever and ever. Uh, and I can't imagine the agony of not having all the tools you need, having a sonogram, having the ability to hear your child's heartbeat, having the counseling and the need for resources in an unwanted pregnancy. Um, that we spend the amount of money we do in the manner that we do, providing for people that we really don't care about, meaning the illegal immigrants. They don't care about those people. They have imported poverty into this country, and by the way, we're not getting the poorest of the poor of those countries. The poorest of the poor of those countries, like Haiti and Jamaica and Honduras and Nicaragua and Venezuela and Ecuador, the poorest of the poor of those countries, they can't afford to come to the United States of America. They're still wallowing in their poverty, but we do take enough of them. And we entice enough of the poverty from impoverished countries to try to persuade them to come. Why? It's not necessarily for their votes. It's for the census. It's in order to assure the uh, globalist way of life, the progressive way of life, that they can stay in power. And once again, follow the money. You know, right here behind me. I think I have it. Oh gosh, I do. Look at that. There it is. My copy of Follow the money. I still have Ryan's comment up there. Dan Bongino. Interesting thing. The first chapter. Of course, there's me in there. I haven't gotten very far. I picked it up. It's amazing that I have the book. But Follow the Money, the first chapter, lays it out. It's let's see. Chapter 1. Insane in Ukraine. Let me get to it because it doesn't show up very well there. There we go. Insane in Ukraine. That's where this all starts out. That's why I'm encouraging you go out to Mike Bence's interview with Tucker, or to Daily Wire's interview that was just put up today. It's only 25 minutes. And really take in what Kat says. I'm late. Look at that. Hey, Kat, what happened today down at the State House? You should jump on and give us a little 2-minute informational on the crazy of Springfield and everything going on, because we know now they are going to move towards spending more money, more of the taxpayers' money than we can possibly give. But that's not going to stop them, because they've got plenty of programs and units of government to fund, because they're never going to start shrinking that. Will do. Hold on. Oh, she is going to come jump on. Good. I want to hear it straight from the cat. What's happening in Springfield, because she can give us more insight, because she's there now, right? She's living it. She's walking. As I told her on Sunday at church, she's in the belly of the beast. She went from the protection of a studio at Cities, where she could go through and peruse the. There she is. I'm going to put her on. Look at her. Look at that. At the stage. There she is. Did
Hey,
she have?
Paul.
There she is. I was just coming to the end of the show. I'm glad that you jumped on.
Yeah.
I just covered the state of the state address. Did you have an opportunity to be present when JB was giving his state of the state address?
I did not cover the state of the state address. I was doing some other things.
Well, because there's so much to cover.
Yes, there was.
So after a solid week of it, what are the highlights of what you've been able to uncover in the state of Illinois?
So a few stories. There were a couple of stories that were of interest, or that are interesting. One was a bill. I worked on the story for a couple of hours. It was an intense story where they are taking a student's record, and they are going to take that record and no longer make it a temporary record. So typically, your attendance or your academic achievements or lack thereof are on a high school record. So mine is probably destroyed because it's been 5 years since I've been in high school. Now, I don't know, the ins and outs of that record, and if it follows you to college or what, if you have a college one. But anyway, students all over the state, they have an academic record. They're going to be expanding that record, possibly permanently, at least 60 years. And the reason why they're doing this is because there is a DHS requirement. So this is the Department of Human Services, where they say, hey, you need to provide proof of age of onset, and you can provide that proof through a school record of some kind. So it was interesting to listen to that, because the whole time you're thinking about the issue and you're like, oh, DHS has this issue with the eligibility requirement. So yeah, that was an interesting story. And
hey, by chance, did you see Mike Benz and Tucker? Did I send you that link? You got to go watch it. This guy is a former State Department in cyber, and he talks about the weapons of mass deletion. Yeah. It deals with the State Department, the CIA, the FBI, DHS, Homeland Security, and his knowledge of what has gone on around us. So this bill that you're talking about sounds familiar because I just heard a commercial on our local conservative slash not so conservative radio station, um, where somebody that we know very well, who's with a company that deals in a little cybersecurity from the photo uh, collection of data and record compiling records on students K through 12 and in universities. Uh, that it's interesting. What do they need to have that data for?
Hmm.
Why do they need the students' data?
Hmm.
Have you ever thought about that? What are they trying to get at with collecting all of this information?
Well, my reporting, I talked about Dave Kaler. He's the senator with the bill, and he's going to be amending it to limit the scope of the bill. But it was really interesting, where they included, it went beyond attendance. It included things like psyche evals. Okay, that makes sense for the disabled bit of it. But then it goes further and it talks about, and Republicans raised this concern, hey, this is a concern of privacy issues, the scope of the language, or the language here. It says,
Mm-hmm.
it goes as far as to say personality traits. So you can include somebody's personality trait, which is subjective, right,
Yeah.
in a student record. So they're supposed to be amending it.
Is that because they've tested the personality traits? So they've given them like a disc or something? You know what I'm talking about
It
when I
could
say a
be,
disc?
yeah, it could be like one of these tests where you start the school year out. They are implementing these new mental health screenings in the state of Illinois, where it's an Illinois youth survey, and they go through, and that's more of like a mental health, like how are you? Like some of the questions are, do you have an adult in your life other than your parent whom you can go to talk about tough issues or something like that? That was a question on that Illinois Youth Survey. So they conduct a lot of those types of surveys in public education. But I mean, at the way the bill was written, it was kind of broad. So Republicans were concerned that um, the teacher could just say, "Hey, little Timmy, you are exhibiting some personality traits of somebody who is reckless."
Huh.
Let's say that that's a personality trait. I don't know. Um, and, that could be entered into the student's record via the teacher. So, if Timmy wears a Trump hat or a BLM t shirt, that could possibly be entered into the record. It was very, very broad. And Dave Kaler recognized that, and he said that he's going to be amending it. At least the Republicans are saying that it's very broad.
Dave Killer isn't amending anything. They have a bunch of staff writers down there. All they do is chicken scratches on post-it notes, and then the next thing you know, there's 3,000 pages of legislation or a bill that has been created because most of those representatives and senators have no clue what those bills say. That's why they have to go through and cross them out, right? I mean, it's no different than the budget. Nobody's reading all those pages, are they, Kat?
It's hard. I am. I'm trying to.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, do they truly have time where they have an understanding because they do represent the people, and or at least they're supposed to represent the people. Instead, they represent government right now, which has kind of been the theme of the show. As you know, you helped me get this all up today with NGOs are getting rich off the migrant crisis. I mean, everything, and that's why I'm encouraging and pointing everyone I know as far as I can scream, go out and listen to this guy, Mike Benz. There is no one that articulates what is transpiring when it comes to data and why it is they're so driven on getting all of this information about you and me. When you talk about wearing a Trump hat or whatever, um, yeah, the level of censorship, they Kat, have you ever thought about this? When they talk about an existential threat to democracy, they're not talking about a threat to the Constitution. They're talking about a threat to the institution, whether that be NGOs, the Board of Education, uh, the banking system, uh, the media, even mainstream media, that coming out and making comments that are inconsistent with what their narrative is actually viewed as a threat now, a cyber threat. Therefore, that needs to be removed. So, any of us who are out there voicing a different opinion than what the mainstream media or what other governmental elected officials are speaking of, then suddenly that is. Did I just drop? Did I just knock you off?
Nope. I have to get going, but
You
I was
got to
gonna
go. Cat.
keep listening to your show.
All
I'll
right,
keep
keep listening. All right, but that's the crazy thing.